I've always seen fashion as an avenue for self expression, a way for me to feel good but also feel seen. And for as long as I can remember, I've always felt more comfortable in less girly clothes. I think one of the things I've learned to love in this space of fashion is that it isn't meant to be defined by the presence or absence of masculinity or femininity. It's really about fluidity, living by your own rules, and wearing whatever makes you feel good. Which brings me to the question I've been asking myself: how has your style changed over the years? I've always thought of personal style as something that's sort of ever changing, and as you evolve and grow, so does your taste and maybe the things that you like. But before we get into today's video, I just wanted to take a second to sort of reintroduce myself since I know there are a lot of new subscribers on here. My name is Shanaza Divine. I'm a androgynous fashion creator, enthusiast, and a lot of my content here focuses on menswear, women's wear, and sort of the beautiful bridge in between, which also brings me back to today's video, my style evolution. I feel like when I think back about my style before, I would say it was a lot. There was a lot of elements and components sort of happening, but one of the things that I feel like I cannot mention without talking about my style evolution is sort of coming out. And I think that's pretty big because I feel like it was just such a fundamental aspect of and just sort of my style evolution. I think for most queer people, we sort of, spend a lot of time hiding and trying to, find the words to maybe, express who we are, or, be able to sort of deal with gender norms and societal pressures, culture, traditions, all sort of things. And for me, coming out was truly sort of that catalyst that helped me get to the next point of, my personal style journey. I think prior to that, there was a lot of pressure to maybe fit into what was considered normal, especially, as a woman, like this is what you're supposed to do, this is what you're supposed to wear. And, sort of defying that or breaking out of that was like a big deal. I also think that a lot of what I wore, maybe when I was, pre-teens to, teenager going to college, my parents bought my clothes for me, which also meant that I didn't have a lot of say in what I was going to be wearing. And, they bought a lot of my clothes from the women's wear, which were things that were, usually super tight or really form-fitting. And for me, those things just never felt super comfortable. They never felt like me. While I did wear them, I always felt really uncomfortable, wearing things like dresses or skirts or just like really tighter form-fitting clothing. But also because of that, I sort of always ended up dressing really femme presenting, which also sort of manifested in hair. I feel like hair is such a big component of, an evolution of style as well. A lot of my hair was sort of worn in like braids or really protective styles. There wasn't really a lot of freedom, I feel like, for me to sort of explore, maybe color my hair or try different like hairstyles. So a lot of my outfits ended up like being super, super girly. But I would also say that there were a couple moments there where, I felt like I sort of was trying to do something a little bit different. Maybe it wasn't always met with like the most enthusiasm or, happiness, because my parents were pretty conventional Nigerian parents. And so for me, they were just like, you're a woman, you're a girl, this is what you're supposed to do. But I think for me, I had always sort of loved menswear. To me, it just resonated more. It felt more aligned. It felt more comfortable. I had always sort of been interested in, I guess, clothes that weren't really form-fitting. And at the time, that just meant menswear because that was the only thing that like wasn't traditionally women's wear. One of the things too back then was that I feel like there weren't a lot of maybe more masculine presenting women or androgynous queer people that, were sort of like defying the norms. And so for me, a lot of my inspiration sort of came from men just wearing menswear because, that was sort of my understanding of what it meant to be a lesbian, was that, wearing oversized clothing was the only option that we have. Also, mainly because a lot of brands at the time really weren't putting so much attention to making more genderless unisex clothing. But I do feel like the turning point as far as my style really started when I went off to college, which I'd say was early 2014. First time I felt sort of free to step outside of, the box that was created for me. I remember one of the first things that I sort of started experimenting with was my hair, because I had sort of reached this like point with my hair where I was like, I can't do the braids anymore. So I remember at the time I ended up getting an undercut, which at the time was also really popular, especially within like, I feel like within the lesbian queer community, having an undercut was like the thing. I remember getting an undercut with like the designs and stuff, and you know, it was like I felt so cool. I felt like I was untouchable. From there, we just sort of started to, I guess, feel a little bit more aligned, a little bit more comfortable in my identity. At the time, for a really long time, skinny jeans had a hold on me. And that sort of like oversized long tee, I also think that a lot of that had to do with just a lack of representation. I think for me at the time, like I just hadn't seen anyone who maybe was defying the norm. A lot of it was just like oversized t-shirts and skinny jeans, graphic tees. And so that was sort of the thing for me for honestly a really long time. I also was mostly broke in college. I was a broke college student, so that meant that my options as to like where I was shopping and stuff were very limited. I also think that for me, I just gained a lot of inspiration from men just wearing menswear again because there was just a lack of representation. And I think a lot of times, like, you know, things look different on different body parts. A guy wears something and then me wearing it and realizing, like, you know, I have other body parts that maybe they don't have. So inherently, things are going to look different on me and for me, you know, was something that I also struggled with for a while. One of the biggest differences in my style then is that I feel like I had always never felt maybe like super aligned with being a lesbian or whatever, you know, the terminology. Then maybe the last like 3 to 4 years, you know, I was like, oh, like there's a term non-binary. And I was like, oh, okay, that feels a bit more aligned to who I am. And so sort of having words or just having a better understanding of things that better explain me has also helped my identity. And the biggest shift for me now in my style isn't just clothes. I think a lot of it also has to do with like internal. I spent a lot of time when I was like younger, you know, trying to find out who I was and trying to be myself and, you know, whatever that meant. And so I think now being in a space where, you know, 16-year-old me isn't 26-year-old me. I think that plays a factor as well because I just I feel more confident in the way that I present and the way that I take up space. I know what I like, and that has just come from me sort of having the trial and error, experimenting, making the bad decisions, wearing, you know, the mixed match colors, wearing all the bad things that you could possibly wear to finally get to a point where I'm like, I now know what I like. That knowing what I like also shows up in sort of the way that I dress. Learning what works for my body now has also helped, like understanding my proportions and just understanding that not everything you see on a mannequin or on somebody that look the same way on you, and you have to find people that have similar body types or just are more accurate representations of, you know, who you are or what you look like. The other thing too is looser silhouettes. I mean, I used to wear a lot of skinny jeans, and I think that I can credit some of my style evolution to social media. I feel like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and just like having more exposure, having more access to resources has also helped my style as well. Seeing more people who look like me has given me inspiration to be like, okay, step outside of the box, try something new. I see this person doing it. That also means that maybe I can try to do something. I can't talk about my style evolution without also talking about, you know, the power of social media and what that has done. No matter what, we are all inherently like influence, inspired, or whatever it is from social media and what we consume. And that has effect on sort of what we wear as well. Another thing, my hair is different. I went through phases of, you know, having protective styles, undercuts, to just complete cutting my hair, growing my hair again, you know, cutting my hair, coloring my hair, locking my hair again. I think this is the third time that I'm locking my hair, and it's been almost a year and a half now. It's been like a process. Hair is one of those things that's sort of the last thing on the style evolution journey. But for me, I think early on, I realized that hair played a bigger role than I thought. And so once I started sort of experimenting with my hair, even in college, I realized like, oh yeah, this is a game changer. Once you figure out what you want to do with your hair, it can change a lot about how, you look at yourself, and, also how people look at you. And so I think for me, the hair journey has been major as well. I feel like my locks now just feel more representative of like where I am in my life, where I am in my journey. I'm more dedicated to the process of like growing my hair out. I think another big change when it comes to my style evolution is just how I shop. I'm not at a point anymore where I'm sort of, chasing trends or trying to find the next thing. That's taken some time. I can't say that I've always been like quality over quantity when I was like in college, because that was not true, right? I didn't have resources. I didn't have the money to think about, the quality of what I was buying. So I can acknowledge that there is sort of a privilege and, access to resource of being able to buy more intentionally, have more money to spend on clothes. Me, fashion is a fundamental part of like who I am and how I show up. And so for me, it is important now to sort of buy things that I know will last me, buy things that I know, are going to be a part of my journey for a while. I also think working at a secondhand store, I've talked about this before, has completely changed the way that I interact with fashion. I don't think that had I not been working here, my perspective would have changed so quickly. But I think having access and working in the space that I do has also changed my interaction and how I interact with my style and fashion. I'm much slower now when it comes to buying. I think a lot about what I'm gonna buy, why do I need it, what purpose does it serve. Also, looking back, there isn't any right way to approach fashion, your personal style. Your style doesn't have to make sense to anybody other than yourself. A lot of times, like, people look at other people's styles and it's personal to that person and not necessarily personal to you. Personal style in the journey of finding out what you like, who you are. And, I feel like my style 2 years ago isn't even the style that I have now. My biggest takeaway when it comes to personal style is just to be kind to yourself. You're not supposed to have it all figured out in a blink of an eye. You're not like, it's not that you wake up and you're like, I want my style to be different. And then all of a sudden it's like, boom, you arrive to this like perfect closet wardrobe. Like, be kind to yourself, take time, be patient, let your style grow with you. It's not static, it does grow, it shifts, and it should shift as you transition and enter into different points of your life. Don't be afraid to break the rules. Try something new, regardless of gender, societal norms, what you're supposed to wear, what you're not supposed to wear. Try something new. Don't be afraid to experiment. A lot of growth comes from pushing yourself outside of the comfort zone and trying something that you may not necessarily always gravitate toward. In the comment section, let me know how your style has changed or what inspires your style the most. As always, thank you for watching my video. Do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And Happy New Year. I'll see you guys in another one.